Oh, well, hello. Feels so good to move. Yeah, in different ways. So that's why we're here. Thanks for coming to the mat. I'm glad you are here. So today's a yoga basics class, and I want to get into some of the basics of really activating our legs in a balanced way, which is hard because a lot of us have developed sort of an imbalance of tension and strength just from living daily life. So it's kind of a way of giving a little physical therapy to all of this part of our body. And so we're going to be taking that intelligence into our warrior lunges and so on. We're also going to notice how some of the warrior alignments, this act of having one leg back from neutral, right? This is neutral. Having one leg back, what that does for this part of the body, this kind of low abdomen, hip flexor area that really gets tight on a lot of us, and we don't notice necessarily. There's not like a pain that warns us always. Sometimes people have that. But I'm hoping you'll get to discover in these positions, especially with our attention on breath, what's going on in that part of body for you, because it really impacts low back, the health and the comfort level and strength of that low back area. So it's really important, and this is our chance to check in with it. So I want to make sure that everyone's got a block. If you don't have a block, you could use a bolster or a cushion, a thick book or something. But I would like you just for a moment here standing to join me with your feet in neutral, kind of Tadasana, maybe 6 inches apart. And then to just notice what happens when you squeeze that block and then release. And what most of us will experience is kind of a fluctuation in the angle of the pelvis, as well as the kind of engagement of the glutes and so on. So what I feel when I squeeze the block is I can feel, first of all, my inner thigh all the way up into like the pelvic floor engaging, and my glutes a little bit, and that my pelvis kind of tilts under, or in my case, sort of more neutral. When I let go, my pelvis is inclined to tilt back, kind of into like a light sway back. And so yours may not be perhaps visually as noticeable as, say, mine when I allow it to really do that. But I'm hoping you'll notice just some physicality, that you'll be like, oh yeah, I can feel these things igniting or not. If you're not feeling anything igniting in that inner thigh groin area, I encourage you to keep doing this and really try and wake that zone up, because it makes a huge difference in core stability. When we talk about core, most of us think sit-ups and we think these muscles. And of course our core is all the way into the pelvic girdle, which includes the engagement and support of the thighs and glutes, and then of course our back body and those powerful core muscles on our side. So keep the block handy, because we're going to do that same squeeze in bridge pose and some of our other stuff to get our body kind of warmed up and present, and then we'll take it into some of our warrior alignments and so on. And in Thursday's class, the Yoga Flow class, we're going to do more of the warrior series in flow, and you'll get to integrate that if you're doing both. All right, let's come on down. And we're going to go right to our bridge pose. So bringing the feet directly below the knees, placing the object. You don't want to have anything hard right in between the knee joints, because you've got a lot of very sensitive connective tissues and stuff here, insertion points and things. So have it kind of more in the meaty part of the thigh, the fleshy part. And I'm going to work my shoulder heads a little underneath. This is always important for protecting the cervical spine, so that when I go up, I'm not feeling pressure into my vertebrae. You shouldn't feel any pressure discomfort. So as you're ready, a long inhale, slow, deep, and wide. Exhale, simply squeeze the block, nothing else. Squeeze, hold. See if you can engage your perineum, pelvic floor, and then inhale, soften. And we're going to do that for a number of rounds, deeply focused inward, listening to the body. A long inhale through the nose. Exhale, squeeze the block, and you might even also draw the abdomen down towards the spine, kind of like we do in compression breath. Hold, notice, inhale, relax. And so notice, please, when you're in the contraction part,
if you're tightening your neck, it's a weird habit that a lot of us have. We don't need the neck muscles in this position, obviously, but a lot of us will tighten those neck muscles whenever we're trying to focus or accomplish anything or be strong somewhere else in the body. So you might even play with rotating your head side to side to tell those neck muscles to be soft while you're deeply engaging and letting go. And so you can even have your hands on your hip bones if you'd like to be more aware of that pelvic tilt that happens when you're squeezing the block. We'll do a few more. And you know, again, some of us are going to have a much more dramatic experience with this than others. If you're like me and you have had a habit of walking with your feet turned out or on the outer edge of the foot, which I used to do very strongly before yoga, this is a really profound way to start renovating that pattern. And a lot of people who find that they've had chronic back pain will have it dissipate or go away entirely. But this is one that could be done every day if you're noticing, wow, this is really doing something. Then a daily practice really would help the body. All right, last one, and release. We're going to release the block. We're going to take it straight up into bridge pose. Again, keep those shoulder heads underneath. And imagine that that block is still there. And kind of practice squeezing the imaginary block. And out of curiosity, let go of that squeeze and kind of notice what happens. What I notice is that I get kind of weak feeling, and my weight goes a little more to the outer part of the foot. It's very subtle, but my knees kind of go apart a little bit. So notice when you engage that inner thigh to squeeze the block a little bit, what happens for the body and stability. And instability, I mean, not instability. And notice if it allows you to lift one foot off the floor and kind of hover there, and then switch without a big kind of dump of one side. So what we'd like is to be able to release the one foot without much of a shift really through the hip bones or pelvis. And again, if you're feeling back pain, I encourage you to notice if you're arched, and instead try to kind of tuck the tailbone, squeeze that imaginary block. And if it's feeling good, go ahead and take it to that other layer, extending the leg. The thighs are staying the same height they were. We're just extending through the knee, creating a little more weight for the body to counterbalance. And I find I'm much more likely to tighten the neck here because all of a sudden it's more work. But again, the neck shouldn't be doing the job. Breathing, see if you've got one more in you. This is intense, you might have already come out, that's fine. And then come slowly, slowly down. Good, bring knees to belly. Oh. So really almost any time we may go shape one direction, if we can make it the other way, kind of counterbalance, the body really appreciates that. Okay. We're just going to relax here and come into our yogic breath, if you will. And you can be here with knees bent if that's more comfortable on your back, or you can take them nice and straight and maybe even spread them out so that you're kind of beyond that path of motion of the feet straight down from the hips. And sometimes in this position, I'll just be inspired right away to kind of roll my wrists and ankles. Again, we don't get to do a lot of range of motion, most of us in daily life, and the body loves that. So when you are ready, relaxing to tune in to breath. Turn the gaze up and in towards the center of the forehead. Lightly connect the tip of the tongue at the roof of the mouth behind the front teeth. And invitation to add ujjayi, great sounding breath. So you contract your throat a little bit. And as the breath is passing through, it'll make kind of a sound, a whooshing sound. Wind in the tops of the pines or ocean waves. And we know that this ujjayi breath is very useful for a variety of reasons. So if you can find it and are comfortable, please keep it going. They studied that it actually helps us get a more steady flow of oxygen and use in our body. I find it to be a great place to focus my mental attention. And also that it often will help us engage in the core body. So if we're moving, say, from an upward facing dog to a downward dog, or something that requires a fair bit of power, that ability to kind of with the throat breath can really get us into that center body. So continue please for a few more rounds, Ujjayi, if you can. If you find it really distracting or you're stuffy and you gotta breathe through your mouth or something, then do what you gotta do. Otherwise, use that whooshing sound to help you notice the moment that the inhale or exhale is complete and there's just a gap, a moment of pause, kind of non-breath. Continue a few more rounds, noticing if the mind wanders off. That's totally normal. Just call your puppy mind back and attend to the breath every time you notice that wandering. A couple more. Now the next time you are exhaling, invitation to hold out, external breath block or external kumbhaka, and we're going to add abdominal pumping. Excuse me. This is a great way to get some stretching and movement into some of those low muscles that I was talking about. So as you're ready, gather a long inhale, slow, deep and wide. Is there more? Exhale, empty, and hold out. With the breath held out, draw the belly in like you're saying, see how skinny I am, and then push it out, kind of a big Buddha belly. And this is all done without breathing until you need to breathe. And then you let the pumping go. And I often do a sighing breath. It feels so good. We hold a lot of emotional stress and tension also in our center body. So it's not just the physical tension of those deep abdominal muscles and the psoas and so on, but it's just also, you know, have you been tense, have you been stressed and so on, have you been hurrying? A lot of that gets stored right here. So as you come into another round, notice to what extent you want to just speed up the pumping or slow it. One of my favorite things to do, go ahead when you're ready, inhale, exhale, empty, is to kind of draw my belly in, like I'm seeing how skinny I am, pause, and then kind of draw it in even further, like you're trying to bring your stomach kind of up under your rib cage. And sometimes that'll give me a stretch like right into my throat area or chest area, which is wonderful. It's like getting a massage interiorly, you know, in a way that nobody can massage you there. So it's pretty awesome. Let's do one last one. Big inhale. Exhale, empty. Hold out and begin. Marvelous. We're going to come into reclined pigeon. So bend the knees, cross the right ankle onto the left thigh. Feet are flexed as I bring the whole deal towards my chest. And you can hug just around the right knee like so, or if it works better for you, you can also kind of clasp the foot. But it's that bringing the knee itself towards the right chest that's going to give us the good angle so that when we rotate just a little bit left, we should get a wonderful stretch kind of into this right glute. Some people might feel it in the thigh and so on. Again, if you feel any back pain or joint pain or anything, you always come out, find another way. Breathing deeply. And when you feel complete, you'll come on out and we'll go to the other side. We're always curious how the two sides might differ. Cross the left ankle, the right thigh, hug that left knee. Again, notice that my feet are flexed. This gives the knee stability. It's particularly important for the one that's crossed, right? So it's at this kind of funky angle. which it's meant to be able to do, but a lot of us just don't make this shape with our leg throughout the day. This is a neat one you can do seated as well, like just sitting in a dining room chair, cross that ankle onto the other thigh, and as you lean your torso towards the thigh or the chair, you'll get a nice stretch. Here you can rotate a little to the right. Oh, hello, stretch. Breathe. And slowly return and release that foot. Good. We're going to come onto our front bodies. So I'm just going to kind of spinal rock like so. And come on, flip over in my belly. So we're going to stretch out that front body, and one great way to do that is our cobra pose. So you want to have your hands about outside of the chest, and most importantly is the shoulder heads anchoring down and elbows in. Power down through the pelvis, and then inhaling, just breathe here without changing your shape. Keep those shoulder heads down. Next breath, inhale and extend the spine forward as if you're trying to pull the heart off the front of the yoga mat. Exhale, return to your forehead. I'm going to relax my glutes for a moment for the rest of that release, and then re-engage. Inhale, extend. Exhaling, return. Again, you can release the glutes to give them a break. And progressively, you might decide it would feel good to press a little bit through the hands. But I'm simply drawing my heart forward as I do so. I'm not trying to crank my torso back and further away from the mat, because that's just going to compress the spine. We always want elongation. So continue for a few more rounds, inhaling, extending, exhaling, returning. Keep squeezing those upper arms in, shoulder heads down and back. And so I'm starting to feel a nice stretch through those low abdominal muscles. Big inhale, exhale, return. Turn your head to the side and just relax a moment. See if you can get a big enough abdominal breath that you feel it in the low back. And so a nice massage. And again, remember you can add sighing breaths anytime you like. Good. And we're going to bend the knees and just gently windshield wiper the feet side to side. Very important that you're not doing this vigorously, because it can kind of crank on that pelvic stability and low back area. All right. And invitation now for pre-bow. If you prefer to do the standing quad stretch, go for it. Otherwise, right here, place a forearm for a little bit of support. Squeeze the glutes down, and then bend the knees and reach for the ankle with the free arm. Then making sure those glutes are squeezed and that you're squeezing the thighs like you've got the block between them again, just like you did in bridge. And that should make it very safe to reach back for that other ankle without crimping in the back. If this reach just doesn't work, then you need to get a strap or a scarf around there. That can be hard in this position without someone helping you, and that's where doing a standing quad stretch would be more approachable. Otherwise, we're breathing here, and I like to pulse in and out to start. So anchoring the pelvis, squeezing the thighs. Inhale, press the ankles back into the hands. Let it open up the heart. Exhale, return. Good, let's do that twice more. Is there more? Is there more? Last time. And release. Plant the hands, squeeze the glutes to transition to our child's pose. Take those knees out wide. So I like to point out that often, people kind of just flop themselves back to child's pose, and it can have a lot of stress on the shoulders and the low back. So it's actually, even though we're moving to a resting pose, child's pose, it's actually a very active transition. So with those knees wide, I'm hoping, again, that you're getting some nice stretch through the hips, low back, and so on. Don't worry if your butt doesn't reach back to the heels. And of course, if this bothers your knees, then just being on your feet in kind of a rag doll is also a nice release for those same areas. tuck the tailbone on your next exhale, kind of coming into your cat back. And that's going to lift us nicely up into table pose, bringing the knees directly in under the hips, hands below the shoulders. Remember, intelligent hand position, fingers really wide. Good. Inhaling cow, tilt the tailbone back, heart forward. Exhaling belly to spine. Feel that stretch that's available through the upper back if you really let your shoulder blades draw down away from one another, kind of to the outsides of the body. And I'm using my ujjayi to really get my core engaged. And on your next exhale, cat, curl those toes under and let that powerful ujjayi and core take you downward facing dog. I like to start with knees bent, and frankly, you never have to straighten your legs in downward facing dog. Take time and pedal through one foot at a time. You know, you can change the distance between your hands and feet to make it feel doable. We should not have our hands so close to the feet that we're like shoulders over the hands. We want our body making kind of a shape of an A, if you will, connecting the core back into the spine. See if you can power your heels a little towards the floor and welcome the hamstring or calf stretch. One more deep breath. Good. I'm going to have you come forward like you're coming into a plank. Squeeze your inner thighs right here. Pretend that block is still there. And it should make you feel much stronger here in plank. You can also come to knees down, of course. All right. Take another nice breath here, inhaling. We're going to return to downward facing dog. Good, let's do that again. Inhaling, imagine you're squeezing those thighs on a block and either knee down or classic plank. Nice long line. Exhale, downward facing dog, ujjayi. It's the belly that takes you back. Good. We're going to slowly walk the hands back to the feet now, just working, pushing, elongating through that arm. It's great work. It's like pressing weight above your head, which we know is good for us, but we don't do very often. And you might sweep the area around you. Let that head really release with gravity. If you feel inclined to do a brief yoga mudra, bend the knees and intertwine the hands, or grab a scarf or a sock or something to make it easier. Or you can do the standing version of this as well. And on your inhale, release. And sweep up, big glute squeeze. And exhaling, prayer hands. Lovely. We're going to step sideways on our mat, and we're going to come into that movement I was playing with when I first greeted you. And it's kind of fun because it gets really into this side body, which is actually a huge part of, again, our stability and also our tension and sometimes our discomforts. So just ask me to come into kind of a comfy squat. My feet are turned out a little bit. They're neither all the way out nor straight forward, just kind of comfortable. And I'm just going to start sweeping one arm up, reaching as I sink my hips down, and exhale, release. Inhale, sweeping the other arm up, and I'm looking down at the floor because it's just easiest on my neck. And you can take it a little farther over. Good. One more time, each side. Lovely, and release. We're going to step into mountain Tadasana. And we're going to be playing with some of the components of Warrior Series today. And I find this is really great practice even for people who have been doing yoga a really long time. There's a lot of kind of subtle attention that we can make that makes just a huge difference to our alignment and therefore our safety in the pose, but also what we're getting, because we want to work the right muscles, right? We don't want them being sleepy and not participating. So first in our mountain, get those feet straight forward and see if you can anchor firmly through the big toe and the ball. And again, for those of us that might be have a tendency towards hanging out on the outer part of the foot, or the feet being turned out, this activation of that big toe and ball is important but might be difficult. So what I notice when I do that very intentionally, I can feel that same inner thigh glute engagement and pelvic adjustment that I did when we had the block between the thighs. So I'm asking you to really tune into your own body a moment and listen inward. What happens in your body as you plant very firmly with the inner line of the foot, the rest of the foot bed is still there, and then spread the toes. See if you can feel deeply engaged, again, not tightening as hard as you can, but I mean deeply engaged, like an intelligence from the feet up through the thighs and the pelvis and so on. And let's rotate the shoulder heads down and back, palms open, check the neck, tell it it's off duty. There's nothing it needs to do in this moment. And we'll just take 3 breaths here. Notice if that engagement is difficult to maintain. You can always take a break and then reestablish it as well. But that's also a great clue that there's maybe some muscles there that don't get used often and they're finding it a little fatiguing. That's all right. Okay, as you're ready, we're going to be coming in and out of a warrior lunge. Actually, it'll be our warrior 1 stance. I'm going to have you take your hands on your hips like so, just for ease. So all I have to think about is your legs. You're going to take your left foot, you're going to be externally rotating your thigh hip a little and stepping back so that that foot plants. It's if your front foot is at noon, that left foot would be, let's say, at 10 or 11, something like that, okay? And hold, feel, make adjustments if you need to until those hips are straight forward. And then if you would, please inhale, reach up, and if you're comfortable doing so, briefly reach your chin straight up. You're not dropping the head back, you're reaching up. Good. Exhaling, return the hands to the hips. We're going to do that twice more. Inhaling, reach up. Breathe. Is there more? Keep pushing back through your back, calf, and foot. Exhaling, hands on hips. And one more. Big belly breath. And exhaling, hands on hips. Return feet to neutral. And I'm going to come into a little ragdoll. Again, that nice opposite shape to release through the low back. And when you're ready to come up, drop the butt. Inhale, root and rise. Exhaling, prayer hands. So just pause, breathe, and evaluate. Were you able to get some kind of stretch through that left kind of abdomen, hip flexor area? I hope so. And again, you might have also felt some stretch through your Achilles, calf. These poses are really good at helping clue us in where we're tight. So hands on hips. This time I'm going to take the right foot and I'm going to be rotating it to the right a little bit. So if that front foot is noon, this back foot is now at like 1 or 2. And I want to check that those hip bones are straight forward. And I realized I kind of stepped my right foot further to the left than I really want to. And I could feel that it creates kind of a challenge for me to get my hips forward. Really, if you think about like us being in train tracks when our feet are here, I want this right heel to step back, still pretty much in that train track. So I'm not pulling it over into the left train track, if that makes sense. And that's important because otherwise you're going to create a bunch of compression and torque that isn't helpful to us at all. Okay, so holding here a moment, steer those hip bones. Use that back thigh to power back. And that's what's going to create this wonderful, I hope, stretch as you inhale and reach up, arms, chin, deep breath. Exhale, hands to hips. Twice more. Is this side different? Nice ujjayi. And return to Tadasana, bend the knees, ragdoll. Deep belly breath, just like we did in child's pose, so it brings a stretch to that low back. And when you are ready, drop the butt, root and rise. Exhaling, prayer hands. All right, we're going to step sideways on the mat. So we're going to play with our warrior 2 lunges. So rotating your right foot 90 degrees And this can vary. Again, people teach it differently. Do I want my front heel in alignment with my back arch or with my back heel? I tend to teach it heel to heel alignment because, again, it creates less kind of torque. I think it's easier, more accessible for the human body, especially for those of us that have some tension, but I just think it's generally healthier. So when you do that rotation, check that you're just pivoting on your heel like so. Again, I'm going to keep my hands on my hips for stability. As I start pulsing my knee forward by pushing through that back leg, I'm kind of sending everything forward. I want to make sure that my knee's not coming forward to the heel. If that's happening, you have to widen your stance, right? And I don't want to have it come way behind either. I want it to be able to arrive above the heel. And I want to see my knee tracking with the foot. If that's not happening, this is where I need to practice an external rotation of the thighs. So if you're not sure, kind of take your hands on your thighs a moment and look at them. And if yours is even a little bit angled, that thigh bone, I want you to pause and think about squeezing your right butt cheek towards the left edge of the mat and see if that changes your alignment. I'll show you kind of this direction so that you can see perhaps the subtlety in my body, that if my knee is a little angled inward and I tighten my right glute towards the left edge of the mat, if you will, then this comes into alignment, right? So this is very similar to that use of the block and the squeezing. We're waking up the correct muscles to hold us in a position. And so these muscles are supposed to be participating. I'm not supposed to be kind of hanging on my joints all cattywampus. It just feels really hard on a lot of the back and other joints. So that's really key there, is to notice in your body. Again, you may have been doing yoga for years, and maybe from the naked eye, like me looking at you, it would look mostly straight, but maybe you can feel the subtle difference in your body, all right? Let's neutral that foot back to straddle, and we'll check out the other side. Taking the left foot and rotating. And again, we're really wanting to plant in that internal line, big toe and ball. It doesn't mean I'm leaning the foot in, it just means I'm very intentionally connecting. And then using that back leg to send the hips forward. And I'm doing this not by letting this leg come forward too, I'm actually pressing it back. And I should see my whole footbed flatten out. If you're seeing your foot curling away, then you're missing really the foundation of this pose. It starts with that rooting through there and then letting it come forward. So again, pause and now notice your line of that left thigh bone and see if there's any little adjustments that get made if you talk to that left glute or you talk to the thighs about externally rotating. And what I happen to notice in mine is that there is a little bit of additional engagement, and that when I'm then fully engaged, all of a sudden the pelvic floor and inner thighs that I was waking up with the block earlier kind of click in. And I think of it almost like a tent pole clicking in, you know, it's just like bam, and then it's stable and strong. And so in this position, you should feel very strong. If I were to come and try and kind of push you over, that you would feel that your foundation is there and you can just kind of come back. All right, go ahead and return. Good, I'm gonna walk my feet in a little, bend the knees and fold. Get a nice counter shape for the low back. And then inviting you to go a little side to side. Again, keeping the feet anchored. And if your knee is trying to come past the foot, then you do need to widen your stance. This is something I see a lot of, is that people either give up their foot placement, the anchoring, that way, or this way. And you can see like my toes curl and I lose my arch. I really want my foot to look the same in both positions. Whether my hips are right or left, the foot alignment should look the same. So please look at your own feet, because actually what that tells us is what we are or are not using in our low body, in our thighs and our butt, the ones we're trying to wake up. So the foot is kind of, it's not the foot doing it as much as it clues us in to what's actually happening through here, okay? So we're gonna go where we just were with our warrior one, step back, and then we're gonna transition to warrior two, step backs, all right? So we're gonna kind of keep it flowing here a little bit. All right, so hands on hips again. Nice long breath in. And I'm gonna step back with that left foot angled out a little bit. And I should have said, if for any reason this hurts your foot or ankle or something and you prefer to do crescent lunge, then that's your option where you're on the ball of the foot. All right, we're gonna do that reach up again 3 times. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, hands to hips. What I'm noticing is a lot less stretch through here, meaning I already loosened it up a little bit, which is awesome. And release and return. We're gonna go straight back with that right foot. And make sure you're powering back through that leg. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, return. Remember, you're steering those hip bones. It's like you're feeling the line of energy all the way from the foot pressing in to those fingers rising up. One more. And return. Good. So now we're going to step back into that warrior 2 foot. It's a little challenging, and you may have to do it in multiple steps, but this is kind of a fun adventure. Picturing where you're going to land. You're going to rotate that left foot out more like 90, right, for that warrior 2 lunge. And I'm going to let this right leg bend as I try to step back. And then I kind of check it and see if I got where I wanted to go. And extend those arms out. Good. We also want to check that that back shoulder is actually back enough that the body is straight between 2 panes of glass. Check this front thigh. Again, I often see on people when I tell them to bring their shoulder into alignment, they lose the leg. Good. And to return, we're just going to bring hands to hips, come to the ball of the back foot so that we are nice and stable in the hips before we return to our Tadasana. All right. I'm going to take that right foot and turn it out, stepping back, kind of rotating my shoulders so that they come into that same flat alignment. Reaching from the heart out through the middle fingers, breathing, check that knee, check the shoulder. And return, hands to hips, crescent lunge, and Tadasana. Nice work, folks. Inhale, root and rise. Exhale, bend the knees and fold. And just let that low back go. All right, we're going to come into chair pose. So first I'm actually going to bring you inhaling, place your hands on your shin bones and extend forward through the spine. So we call it extending halfway. Exhaling, drop the butt so you come into your chair with arms forward. You'll see this pose done a lot with arms up. I don't practice it that way because I find most people lose their foundation and it just creates a lot of neck tension. And what we're really interested in here is the work and alignment through here. So you could do this in a mirror, actually would be really helpful at some point to see if you have the habit of the knees coming in. That tells us that we have some muscles that are not participating that we want to wake up. And so if you have that happening, take your hands, tell those knees to get aligned with the feet, and then notice which muscles had to do that. And that'll be kind of your clue to what's going on in your body. Let's inhale, root and rise. Prayer hands. Nice. So we're going to add a little challenge to that. And again, a mirror can be really fun. Just a great way to really reflect back to you what's going on. But again, I often, as you noticed, I look at my own body or I touch it and to try and figure out what's going on. So in this pose, we're going to basically be coming into what we often do, standing crane, but with a little bit of a deeper knee bend. And I want us to really watch what our habit is. So as I bend my knees, I first check, are they aligned with the feet? If not, I align them. And then as I lift my right foot off the floor, I'm really interested in what's happening in the standing side. Is that knee angling in, for example? I'd like to basically keep it in alignment with the foot. Okay, let's set that foot down. Again, find neutral, lift that left leg. Notice what this right leg is doing. And then additionally, we're going to add a little rise and descend, if you will, with the standing leg, a little bit of an elevator pump. And this is where I really noticed a difference between my legs, and there still is one, and you may see it in my body, but it's gotten a lot less because I've evened out some of the imbalances. But we're going to bend the knees. I'm going to lift the right knee, and
as I come up and down with my standing leg, I want to notice how much left and right is happening through the knee joint. And so this is my weaker side that's had a lot of different kind of torque challenges on it. And using the block and things I've been having you do today has been a big part of how I've renovated this, where it's so much better. But I can still feel this sort of left to right movement, that there's not the level of intelligence and stability still through that left side. All right, let's go to the other side. So we're watching as you go up and down, and of course feeling what's happening in there, right? We can see instability, but we can also feel it when it's happening. And really get a nice kick out there. So we're going to do a pose that really helps create some engagement in the posterior chain as we talk about the back body. And one of them is jet airplane. We're going to do a standing version today instead of the on the belly version. And then we're going to do downward dog with leg flying. And it's a really great way to fire up some of these back body muscles, especially in the low body, that just get kind of weak even though they're tight. So we're going to wake those up. And an alternate to that would be table. So if being on your wrists or shoulders, they don't like downward dog, doing it in table would be your option. First, a little standing jet airplane. And I usually do my feet a little wider than neutral, wider than Tadasana. So I've got them maybe 11, 12 inches apart right now. And I'm going to root down through the whole footbed, and I'm going to rotate those shoulder heads down and back until I can feel a little shoulder blade sandwich. But I don't want to be jutting my chest forward. If you're curious, do it on purpose. And what you'll find is usually you get more sway back and you've got pressure back here, right? So I want to make sure I'm squeezing that imaginary block, boom. And from there, I rotate the shoulder heads down and back, but with no arch forward. I'm actually, boom, connecting back right through the ribs, kind of through that xiphoid process, place where the ribs come together. And it's a wonderful place to practice also getting your neck neutral. A lot of people, when they try to kind of do yoga and get strong and open or breathe deeply, they'll reach up through the chin. And it's not actually going to help us get more breath or breath space. It'll make it worse. So I want to find spine neutral, where I'm rising through the crown. And sometimes just taking your own hand there to the kind of back top of the head can be helpful. And one of the things that I notice here is that my whole low abdominal area will really kind of click in as I press up through that spot versus just being kind of slumped or if I'm reaching forward. So this is a deep inward moment for you with your body, noticing subtlety. So what happens, if that chest is forward versus clicked in back into the core? What happens if the head is jutted forward or reaching up versus neutral? And neutral, really, the chin is sort of almost sliding back towards the occipital ridge or base of the skull. All right, and take one more long breath here. Good. As you inhale and slowly sweep the arms out to the side, if you can, slowly notice what's happening in your shoulders and so on. Exhaling, release. Good. One more, inhaling, sweep out and up. And I'm going to take this opportunity to fold and make my way to downward facing dog. Now you can get there, of course, by going to table leg flying. That would be a nice, easy way to do it with a little more control, right? Otherwise, right here, pause, bend the knees as needed to get that nice A shape through your core body. So I'm not swagging, that's really important. I need to draw my sternum back into the belly and ever so slowly take that right leg flying like you're trying to push your heel into the wall behind you. Take another deep breath. Nice Ujjayi breath perhaps. Good, and replace that foot. Let's do a little upward dog, downward dog. Give ourselves a little break from this shape. Inhaling, press the heels back. And this time, instead of going into plank, you're still drawing forward through the spine, but letting the pelvis kind of hang.
It's deeply engaged through the thighs. Exhaling. Press back, downward facing dog. Good. We'll do that one more time. You could also be doing a little cobra and pressing back to child's pose. And finding your way to downward facing dog again. Pause. Slowly take that left leg flying. Notice any changes. Notice if you angled your shoulders or bent an elbow. Try to stabilize. One more breath. Pushing, reaching. Hope you're really feeling that left glute fire up. And return. Good. Upward facing dog, downward facing dog. Or again, you could do cow cat, cobra pumping. And slowly walk the feet and the hands together, however you want to do it. Good. Inhale, root and rise, sweep up. And prayer hands. Good. Let's roll out those wrists. We sure ask a lot of them. So as always, notice if your body is needing anything additional right now to feel perfectly attended to. If we've done this right, again, whether you're an experienced practitioner or you're fairly new, my hope is that you've really woken up some things, kind of fired them up and created some new communications in the body. Shavasana is really where we let that settle in, we let it integrate, basically. It's almost like digesting food, right? You have to give your body time to do that. You can also think of it like kind of rebooting a computer after you've loaded a bunch of new software, right? You have to, kind of restart it, reboot it, let that get integrated, and then you come out better. So it's really valuable to take that time. If you can stay with me for about 5 minutes, it's not a lot of time, and it's surprisingly powerful way to let your practice really do what it needs to do for you. So you could be laying down in corpse pose. You could be with your legs up the wall. We've talked about how wonderfully restorative that is, especially if you're, we've had a lot of heat lately, and if you're feeling kind of swollen through the ankles or the calves and, kind of the lymph area through here, that laying against the wall with your butt up against the wall and your legs straight up the wall is wonderfully restorative. And you can, take your legs out into a straddle, into a butterfly, lots of options there. So if you've got a free wall, you might go and do that now. You're also welcome to join me in seated, whatever feels appropriate today. Wherever you are, please take a moment to just notice. You have done wonderful things. You got to the mat and that you paid attention, you breathed. And what we know about yoga is that we touched and affected parts of our body that we don't even recognize or feel, right? We don't really notice our adrenals or our kidneys or our liver and what's going on with them at any given moment. But that yoga is wonderful at helping create healing and restoration. So as you settle into these quiet minutes, just settle in with a deep sense of, gratification that you got here and that you gave your body some wonderful nutrients for healing. Turn your gaze deep and in. And let go of all breath effort. No jai, no effort from the abdomen, just a gentle rising and settling of the breath like a baby sleeping. Notice if your mind wanders off, and bring your attention back into your body. And just a pleasant awareness of all the important information that's being shared between your cells, your nervous system. And as you begin to deepen your breath, very intentionally send it down into the pelvis, the low belly, the low back. Let it fill the side body up into the chest and heart space. And whatever position you're in, laying or seated, it might feel just marvelous to rotate the head side to side. One of the great gifts of yoga is some of the liberation of the upper spine and neck that holds so much tension. So just that wonderful kind of organic movement left and right can help us refine fluidity. If you'd care to join me in Ohms, please do. You can do so laying down or seated. If you're seated, you might want to place your hands on the body. Actually, laying down you can as well. But laying down, you've got the benefit of the floor being like a sounding board, which can be kind of marvelous. All right, if you'd care to join me, please do. Gathering that first inhale. Om Shanti Shanti.
Peace, peace, peace in your body, your mind, your spirit. Send peace wishes on out to beloveds, out to the larger world and community. Thank you so much for getting to the mat today. Namaste.